I never imagined a single confession could feel like the entire world was tilting beneath me. And yet, there I was, standing in the soft, golden glow of my mom's kitchen, my hands shaking slightly, staring at the woman who had unknowingly captured more than just my attention. Her name was Isabel, and she carried an elegance that seemed effortless, the kind of beauty that didn't shout for notice but demanded it anyway. She was in her mid-40s, with streaks of silver threading through her dark hair, and eyes that held stories I was desperate to read. Me? I was barely 26, still fumbling through the chaotic, unpredictable mess of adulthood, yet somehow, whenever she was around, the world quieted down just enough for me to notice her. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the sort of calm that feels almost sacred. Sunlight filtered lazily through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the countertop. I'd come over to help with groceries, the mundane task giving me an excuse to be close to her, and I could feel the weight of the secret I'd carried for months pressing against my ribs. "Mom," I started, the words catching somewhere between my throat and my heart. She looked up from chopping vegetables, a faint crease of curiosity on her forehead. That crease, those little lines etched by years of laughter, stress, and resilience, made her look even more human, more real, and more irresistible. "I have to tell you something," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Her eyes softened, and for a fleeting second, the entire world narrowed to the space between us. I wanted to reach out, brush a stray lock of hair from her face, and tell her that everything I had believed about love had been wrong until now. But I didn't. Not yet. The tension hung there, thick and unspoken, as if the air itself was waiting for permission to move. My mom, sensing the seriousness of my tone, set the knife down and gave me her full attention. And then I said it. Words I had rehearsed endlessly but never imagined speaking aloud. "I think I married the wrong guy." The silence that followed was deafening, and I could feel the heat of my confession burning in the pit of my stomach. I had expected her eyes to widen in shock, maybe a lecture, a scolding. But instead, she just tilted her head slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. And then I saw him. Standing behind her, leaning casually against the doorway, was my ex, or rather, the man I had thought was my husband for a fleeting, miserable chapter of my life. And in that moment, every nerve in my body electrified, every thought of caution drowned out by the sight of him. But my gaze kept drifting back to her, Isabel, because even in this charged, awkward, almost impossible situation, all I could think about was the way her eyes seemed to see right through me. My heart hammered, and my pulse was deafening. The room, with its familiar smells of roasted garlic and fresh basil, felt suddenly too small, too fragile for the truth we were all silently acknowledging. I wanted to step closer, confess more, risk everything. But the doorbell rang. It was a sound that shattered the fragile bubble we were suspended in, a simple chime that somehow carried the weight of all the consequences yet to come. And in that heartbeat, in that moment suspended between revelation and chaos, I realized nothing could ever be the same again. Our eyes met, hers and mine, and I knew, without a single word, that we were teetering on the edge of something neither of us could or would deny. The doorbell's chime had barely faded when my mom's eyes flicked nervously toward the doorway, then back at me, as if silently asking what I planned to do next. Isabel, calm as ever, adjusted the sleeve of her blouse and let out a breath that seemed to steady the entire room. But I knew better. I could see it in the slight tremor of her hand, the way her fingers lingered on the countertop just a second too long. There was a gravity to her presence that both comforted and terrified me. She had lived through a life that demanded resilience. Divorced once, betrayed by someone she thought she could trust, she carried a quiet wariness, but also a warmth I hadn't encountered in anyone else before. I, on the other hand, had rushed into what I thought was love, blind to the red flags, impatient to believe in something simple, safe, familiar. My marriage had been a cage of polite smiles and unspoken frustrations, nothing like the fire I felt now whenever I was near her. And yet, she was my mother's friend, someone I had known for years in passing, laughing at family dinners, hearing her voice in the kitchen when I was too young to notice how her eyes lingered. That was the forbidden part, the magnetic pull that felt both natural and impossible. I wasn't supposed to feel this way, and knowing it made every glance, every shared smile, electric. I tried to focus on something rational, anything that could explain away the heat rising in my chest. But my mind betrayed me, replaying moments I'd thought insignificant. The way she laughed at a stupid joke I made last Christmas, the brief brush of her hand when she handed me a glass of wine, the way her gaze lingered longer than it needed to, as if she, too, recognized the danger of our connection. She spoke first, her voice low, almost hesitant. "You've grown so much since the last time we really talked." There was nostalgia in her words, but also an edge of longing I couldn't ignore. I swallowed, trying to keep my composure, and found myself admitting, silently, to no one but myself, that I had been thinking about her every day, about her smile, her warmth, her confidence. "You've changed," I said softly. "But you've always had this way of seeing me, like I'm more than I am." Her eyes softened, and I felt the air between us thicken, charged with a tension neither of us could fully name aloud. I wanted to reach out, to close the distance that felt both safe and dangerous. Instead, my fingers brushed against hers as she reached for a spoon on the counter. The contact was brief, but it sent a jolt straight to my chest. A memory flashed. Years ago, she had offered me advice about love over cups of steaming tea, her voice gentle yet firm. I had dismissed it then, too young to understand. Now, with the weight of mistakes and heartbreak between us, every word she had ever spoken seemed to carry more meaning. The room was quiet, except for the faint ticking of a clock, marking time that suddenly felt both infinite and fleeting. In that suspended moment, our hands lingered just a fraction longer than necessary, the air thick with unspoken desire and forbidden curiosity. We didn't say anything, but a smile, a subtle, knowing curve of her lips, passed between us. It was an acknowledgement of history, of risk, of something undeniable. And for the first time, I realized that no matter the obstacles, the truth of what we felt was impossible to ignore. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted me out of the fragile bubble Isabel and I had been suspended in. My heart skipped, not because of the noise, but because it was exactly the kind of interruption neither of us was ready for. I knew instinctively it could only mean one thing. "Mom, I think that's your neighbor," I said, though my voice betrayed none of the panic thrumming inside me. Isabel didn't move at first. Her hands lingered near the counter, fingers curling around the edge like she was holding herself in check. And then, in the quietest of motions, she glanced at me, a look that said more than words ever could. Before I could react, the door swung open, and there he was. My ex-husband. Or rather, the man I had been foolish enough to call my husband. Standing there, grinning like nothing had changed, oblivious to the chaos simmering just feet away. "Hey," he said casually, as if the air between us wasn't loaded with months of unspoken truths and grudges. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Isabel stiffened, her posture almost imperceptibly rigid, yet I could feel the tension radiating off her. She wasn't someone to be easily rattled, but the brief flash of vulnerability in her eyes made my chest ache. "Hi," I replied, forcing a casual tone I didn't feel. Every instinct screamed at me to step between them, to shield her from him, to do something, anything, but I froze. He wandered into the kitchen, oblivious to the way my gaze kept flicking to Isabel. And then it happened. She laughed at something he said. The sound was light, musical, and it hit me like a punch to the chest. It was natural, effortless, and it reminded me why I couldn't ignore what I felt. I could see her internal struggle. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away, as if she were fighting the pull between what was safe and what was real. And I, in turn, struggled to look away, knowing how dangerous this attraction was, but powerless to stop the desire twisting through me. The air between us was charged, unspoken, and electric. I leaned slightly closer when I handed her a dish to dry, our fingers brushing for just a heartbeat. It was accidental, or maybe it wasn't, but the spark was undeniable. Both of us felt it. Both of us knew it. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my roommate. "You left your keys at my place. Can I drop them off?" I cursed under my breath. Timing had never been worse. And just like that, the room shifted. My ex-husband wandered toward the living room, and Isabel's attention snapped to something in the other room. We were no longer alone, our private tension now exposed, dangling on the edge of discovery. I wanted to reach for her again, wanted to pull her close and admit everything I'd kept locked in my chest, but the risk was palpable. My pulse hammered in my ears as I imagined every possible consequence. A moment later, our eyes met across the counter, silent and loaded. I saw the same longing mirrored there, the same danger, the same confession waiting to spill over. But neither of us moved. We were both prisoners of desire, guilt, and the ticking clock of a secret that refused to stay buried. The doorbell rang again. Isabel flinched slightly. My ex-husband paused mid-step, and I felt it. The sharp, cruel twist of anticipation. Someone was coming. Someone might see. And just like that, the fragile equilibrium we'd clung to shattered completely. I wanted to reach for her. I wanted to pull her into the only safe place I could imagine. But instead, we both froze, caught in a single, silent heartbeat where everything was possible and everything was forbidden. The tension in the kitchen had become unbearable. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the distant hum of traffic, even my own heartbeat, felt deafening. I could see it in Isabel's eyes, the flicker of something unrestrained, raw, dangerous. Desire, fear, maybe both. I wanted to speak, to say something that could fix this, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I watched as she moved toward the sink, hands trembling ever so slightly as she rinsed a glass. My ex-husband lounged lazily on the sofa, completely unaware that the air between us had gone electric, charged with emotions that neither of us had permission to feel. "You always have that look," I blurted, unable to stop myself. She froze, her back stiffening, and for a moment, the room felt impossibly small. The one that makes me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Her shoulders sagged slightly, relief or tension. I couldn't tell, but then she spun around, eyes flashing with frustration. "You don't even realize what you're saying," she whispered, her voice tight with something I wanted to name but couldn't. Desire? Panic? Both wrapped into one exquisite, agonizing knot. I stepped closer. My pulse hammered as if trying to escape my chest. "I do realize. I realize every time I see you. Every time you smile. Every time." I swallowed hard, cutting myself off, knowing that saying too much would be reckless, dangerous. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and my stomach twisted at the sight. She was trying to pull away, trying to maintain control, but I could see the war raging in her expression. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance, but the moment was fragile. One wrong move, and everything would shatter. "You can't," she said, voice trembling now, but I could feel the edge of longing in it too. You can't want me like this. You know you shouldn't." And yet I did, more than I had ever wanted anyone. The forbidden, the taboo, the danger, all of it only made the pull stronger. My body reacted before my mind did, my hand brushing hers again, deliberately this time. Her breath hitched, and I saw the flash of something I'd been aching to see: acknowledgement, recognition. Then my ex-husband laughed from the other room, a sound that made the room spin. A surge of jealousy, sharp, bitter, and unrelenting, shot through me. I wanted to tell him to leave, to vanish, to never be here again, but I held my tongue. Instead, I turned back to Isabel, my eyes locked on hers, silently begging for the impossible. For a heartbeat, everything slowed. The tension, the fear, the longing, it all converged in the space between us. I could feel her heartbeat racing against my own. I wanted to close the gap, to risk it all, to see what would happen if I just let go. But before I could, the doorbell rang again. Her hand twitched in mine, the contact electric, and my chest tightened. We both froze, knowing that the moment we'd been circling, the truth we'd been denying, was right there, ready to explode. And then, in that charged silence, I realized nothing would ever be the same after this. Not one choice, not one word, not one stolen glance. The doorbell had barely faded when my mom's voice called from the hallway. "I'll get it," she said cheerfully, completely unaware of the storm simmering in the kitchen. Isabel and I exchanged a glance, tense, loaded, as if the world had narrowed to just the two of us. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her close, to finally bridge the impossible distance, but I hesitated. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. The front door opened, and my roommate stepped in, holding a package. "Hey, I thought I'd drop this off," he said casually, oblivious to the tension radiating off us like heat. But then, His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, and everything changed. I realized, with a jolt that froze my blood, that he had seen us. The way our hands had lingered on the countertop, the stolen glances, the almost touch that had set my chest on fire. My mind raced. Had he understood? Could he piece together what was happening in a fraction of a second? Isabel stiffened beside me, her jaw tightening. I could feel her panic mirrored in my own. The forbidden, the risky, suddenly felt unbearably close to being exposed. He probably didn't see anything, I whispered, but the words rang hollow even as I said them. She looked at me then, eyes wide, and I could see the same dread reflected there. One slip, one misstep, and everything we'd been building, the tension, the attraction, the unspeakable desire, could unravel in an instant. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. I know everything. Meet me. Alone. My heart stopped. I felt the floor shift beneath me. Whoever this was, they had been watching, waiting, and now they held the power to destroy everything, or force us into a reckoning we weren't ready for. I glanced at Isabel, and the color drained from her face. She swallowed hard, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter like she was holding herself together by sheer force of will. "Who is it?" she asked, voice trembling, almost inaudible. I don't know," I admitted, my own hands shaking. "But whoever it is, they know more than they should." We both froze in that moment, the room suddenly claustrophobic. My ex-husband, oblivious, continued to chat from the living room, completely unaware that a bomb had landed in our lives. The very secret we'd been trying to hide. Our eyes locked, and I could feel her pulse matching mine. In that shared heartbeat, all the tension, the desire, the risk, it all converged into something undeniable. We were teetering on the edge of revelation, knowing that one step could either save us or destroy us. And then the knock came, soft, deliberate, impossible to ignore. We froze, our breath caught in our throats, realizing that whatever waited on the other side would change everything. This was no longer just about stolen glances or forbidden attraction. This was a test of courage, of honesty, and of love we weren't allowed to claim. The moment stretched, taut and fragile, and I knew nothing would ever be the same after this knock. The knock on the door reverberated through the kitchen like a drumbeat in my chest. Isabel's hand found mine again, and I felt the tremor running through her fingers, matching my own. There was no turning back. Whatever waited beyond that door would force us into truth, into reckoning, into the raw honesty we'd both been skirting for months. I swallowed hard, heart hammering. "We can't hide anymore," I whispered. Her eyes glimmered with fear and something more, something I had been craving, denying, hoping for. Desire. Need. Love. She nodded, lips parted slightly, and together we stepped toward the door. My ex-husband's voice drifted faintly from the living room, oblivious, a cruel reminder of the risk in every step. But fear didn't have to dictate us tonight. Not anymore. I opened the door, and the truth hit me like a shockwave. My roommate stood there, expression tight, package forgotten in his hands. I overheard," he stammered. "I didn't mean to. I just—" His words faltered, shame and confusion warring in his eyes. Isabel stepped forward, taking a steadying breath. "It's true," she said, voice low but firm. "We can't change what we feel. We didn't plan it. And yes, it's complicated, but it's real." I felt my chest tighten, the words I had wanted to say for months finally spilling free. Isabel, I can't lie anymore. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Not even close. I was blind, and I made mistakes. But you make me see everything clearly. I don't care about what's safe. I just care about us." Her eyes shone, a mixture of relief, fear, and longing. The world outside, the judgment, the age gap, the tangled relationships, didn't matter. In this moment, all that mattered was us. She stepped closer, our foreheads nearly touching, breaths mingling, hearts thundering in sync. And then, just as the distance between us evaporated, my ex-husband cleared his throat from the living room. The tension snapped us back, a jagged reminder that the world still existed outside this fragile bubble. We both froze, knowing the kiss we were leaning toward had to wait, that the consequences were still waiting to unravel. But even in that pause, the connection between us was undeniable. Fingers intertwined, breath shaky, We had crossed the threshold of fear and hesitation. "You don't have to decide everything tonight," she murmured, her lips brushing my cheek in a whisper of a touch. "But we can't deny this anymore." I nodded, chest tight with a mixture of longing and relief. "I won't," I said simply. "Not ever." And for the first time, the weight of secrecy lifted. The path forward was uncertain, messy, impossible, but it was ours to navigate. Together. As my roommate awkwardly shifted in the doorway, Isabel and I shared a look that said everything words couldn't. Desire, promise, reckoning, and hope, all tangled in that single, quiet exchange. The storm hadn't passed. The world outside might judge, might interfere, might complicate everything. But inside this moment, we had chosen each other. And just like that, the door closed behind the last echo of hesitation. The house was quiet again, though not the same quiet as before. It felt lighter, somehow, like the air had shifted after months of tension, of unspoken desires and forbidden glances. Isabel and I sat side by side on the couch, our shoulders brushing, hands intertwined without thought or hesitation. The world outside still existed, my ex-husband, my roommate, the weight of judgment, but for this moment, none of it mattered. We didn't need words. The silence between us was full of everything we had left unsaid, apologies, confessions, laughter we had never dared to share. Her fingers traced idle patterns over mine, and I felt a warmth spread through me, a reassurance I hadn't known I needed until now. "I still can't believe we're here," she whispered, voice soft but steady. "After everything, it feels impossible." I laughed, a short, shaky sound, and shrugged. "Life is impossible sometimes. But maybe that's what makes it worth it." Her eyes glimmered in the fading light of the afternoon, reflecting something I recognized: hope. Not naive hope, not the kind that ignored reality, but the quiet, stubborn kind that refuses to let fear dictate its choices. We had crossed lines, taken risks, risked heartbreak, and yet, here we were. We spent the next hour talking, not just about us, but about everything we had been through separately, the pain, the mistakes, the lessons that had shaped us. She told me about the loneliness that had lingered after her divorce, the moments when she wondered if love would ever be simple or safe again. I told her about my failed marriage, my impatience, and the ways I had tried and failed to understand what love really meant. Every story, every memory, every fear laid bare built a bridge between us. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the tension that had haunted us all these months had transformed into something solid, something enduring. We weren't just attracted to each other anymore. We were anchored in understanding, in mutual respect, in the messy, beautiful complexity of human connection. I leaned back, resting my head against the couch, and she followed suit. We didn't need to speak. Our fingers intertwined, our shoulders pressed together, our hearts quietly agreeing that this impossible, risky, breathtaking thing was worth holding on to. The world outside remained unpredictable, full of challenges and consequences we couldn't ignore. But we had chosen honesty, vulnerability, and each other. And sometimes, that was enough to rewrite what had once felt like a fixed story. As the evening deepened, I realized something crucial. Love wasn't about perfection or timing. It was about choosing someone again and again, even when it was complicated, even when it hurt, even when fear whispered that it was easier to walk away. And in that moment, I knew we had chosen wisely. I turned to her, catching the curve of her smile in the fading light, and I wondered, would we have the courage to face the world together? Could we navigate the risks without losing what we had found in each other? And most importantly, how far would we go for the love that had already changed everything? The answers weren't here yet, but for now, we didn't need them. Because right now, we had each other. And sometimes, that was more than enough. 7.